Oh, sorry. One sec. Sorry.
There we
There we
go.
go.
What's up, Jeff?
Sorry about that. Hey, what's going on, Joe?
Not
How
too
you
much,
doing?
man. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Where are you coming out of?
I am just outside of Detroit, Michigan.
Motor City. All right. I like it.
Motor City. How about you?
I'm in Kansas City. So there's so many similarities. I was up in Detroit in the late 90s and just kind of walking around. It was probably before everything got revitalized, but there was this sense it was like Kansas City. There was the ghosts of Motown. We have the ghosts of jazz. We have these sports teams that everybody rallies around when they finally decide to play well. So, well, and the Lions beat the Chiefs on opening day, so that's good for you
Yes, the,
guys.
the Lions are doing good. Yeah, we're a real sports town. I think we're one of the only cities, Detroit, that is to have all four sports in one right there in the city.
That is that right there. If I ever get on some kind of game show, that's going to be in my back pocket. I didn't realize that. That's great.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
we've been trying to get, yeah, that's right, because you got the Pistons, you got the Red Wings, the Tigers, and the Lions. We've been trying, and our best bet is going to be Mahomes. We've been trying to get an NBA team. And we tried to get, when the Penguins were going to leave some years back, we got a new stadium. We thought we could lure them in. But Kansas City would totally support both of those. We have a minor league hockey team that does really well. I mean, this is a basketball town. We get the Big Eight tournament. We have all of those Midwestern collegiate teams. It just seems like a no-brainer.
That is a no-brainer. And I had to be honest with you, Joe. I have maxed out my ability to talk sports.
You're fine. Don't you? That's why I'm being generic. I got the vibe. I got the sense pretty early, so we're in good shape. Let's segue here. Nice to meet you, and let's begin this conversation with something that we all do know about, and it was the last 3 years surviving COVID. How did you get through it? How has it changed you?
How has it changed me? It gave me extra time with my family because my kids had gone to school. And so, you reach a certain point where your family unit changes because your kids aren't young and you're dragging them everywhere you go. And so it gave us new time together, which was nice to be able to be under the same roof because they came here once their schools shut down. And it also just kind of, for me personally, and I hate kind of saying like, a good thing happened just because so many people had so many bad things happen. But creatively, I was able to start my personal podcast and really kind of focus in on my startup, and it kind of gave you that time where you could focus. I professionally left the corporate job that I had at Little Caesars. So that kind of freed up a lot of doing things that I wanted to do. So ultimately, I was always kind of on the path to do things by myself. I creatively, it just is the way I think I was built, stand up comedy, and then the podcast, doing a startup, always tried to have some kind of startup going at any given time. So the pandemic kind of allowed for that. I think it's strengthened my relationship with my wife as well. I think some people had that opposite
Right.
during the pandemic. I think the divorce rates kind of skyrocketed a bit.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, in that sense, I kind of took it for what it was. And then, I personally like the mask. I liked going out and people not knowing who I was.
Right. I get it.
Yeah,
Hey, look, man, I'm addicted to hand sanitizer. That's one of the offshoots where it's just like I still do it all the time. But it there's probably something that I have in common. I'm a technician by day for a school district, so I'm touching all kinds of things all the time. But I still just it's one of those things where it's just stuck.
yeah, I like the whole fist bump thing. And it was
Yeah.
like, it had nothing to do with specifically COVID. I always felt that way about any cold or flu or anything like that. People would get the flu and it was okay to come to work and get everyone else
Yeah.
sick. At least with COVID, everyone would stay away, even if you had a cough or any symptom. And shaking hands, I mean, I think everyone should know by now. That's the way you transmit anything, cold, flu, anything. Forget COVID for a second, even. And so it's like I like the whole fist bump, move to fist bump, and all that kind of stuff.
Or the elbow
Uh,
check. Yeah.
or yeah, I
Yeah.
never got into the elbow myself, but
Right.
yeah, but I'm with you. So I like that it's not mandatory now, and that there's some semblance. And I've enjoyed going back to comedy clubs and going to movie theaters again, and not really thinking about it. So in that sense, that's where my brain. It's funny. I went from like pro mask guy to, as it started going, and be like, why is that person wearing a mask? He's walking himself outside. This is just not good for anyone. Or driving alone in a car
That's
wearing a
right.
mask.
I know.
Like it's like, come on, guys.
Come on.
It's like
Yeah, it's crazy. So, you got a lot of things on paper that are a part of who you are, but I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders at a career day. And one of the kids looks up and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
I say, well, I follow my creative dreams, and that manifests in a few different ways. One is a podcast where I get to talk to famous people, like the people you see on TV. I talk to the people I used to watch on TV. And for my technical brain, I help people on social media kind of connect with their fans better. So, yeah.
So what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream to grow up and become?
That's a great question. I don't know. I think that was always my problem. I think that's why I'm scattered to this day, or I have so many things going on.
Yeah.
I think no one sat me down and said you have to be one thing. And maybe that's a good thing too. You realize as you kind of go, as you look back, I think some of the things that kind of hold you back or held me back were some of the just the things like, this is what you do, this is what you do next, this is what you do next. And so I've kind of tried to not do that, I
Yeah.
mean? And like I do a lot of things, and you know, I do see like, oh, you were a CFO and now that transfers and everyone knows what that means. Me, I'm a digital entrepreneur. I'm a creative guy, so sometimes that sends mixed message. Which ones are you? Well, why can't you be both? Why
Right.
why do I have to be one thing? Because that's what you need me to be. I'm both. And that some of those skills move back and forth. Doing stand-up comedy for 20 years makes me really good at standing in front of people and talking to them. Oh, you can talk to a CEO. Yeah, I can talk to any CEO because I've been in front of crowds that have been so bad and had to been there for 10 minutes when it's going south. I'm not scared of your CEO.
Yeah. Absolutely. What was the first gig that you did, comedy gig, where you were like, this feels right?
It felt right out of the gate, to be honest with you. I was always funny, you know what I mean? So it's like, so once I kind of found a way to hone that, and I took a writing class at a comedy club, and then that had um, a graduation where you did 7 minutes, and it just felt really good. And I'll say that like the first time it felt really good. I went up before the actual show because I didn't want it to be my first time, because I had like 50 people coming to see me. The actual show itself was amazing. And the third show was a disaster, a disaster. And so, so early on, you kind of learn you got to stay in the game. You have to always bring your A game and do your best to make sure that that time on stage or wherever you're doing is going to connect with who you need it to connect with.
So who's been a hero for you in your life?
A hero. Well, I mean, I've always looked up to my parents. My dad was an entrepreneur. He was a dentist, but I mean, I know that doesn't sound like entrepreneur, but he was with someone. He went out on his own. He always was doing his own thing. So I think a little bit of that. My mom had a rare disease that she passed away from a bit ago, but just watching her kind of just still make the best of everything in the time that she had a big impact on me as well. I think kind of and then their combination of always encouraging me no matter what I was doing, I think is what helped me eventually get to where I'm doing, or to be able to focus and kind of do the things I've always wanted to do. versus necessarily the thing that I was maybe expected to do.
So on your podcast, you get the opportunity to interview famous people. What's a dream interview? Who would be somebody you would love to talk to?
Um, I would love to talk to, obviously, I'd love to talk to Henry Winkler.
You know,
I keep saying that because maybe one day it'll manifest. I've talked to Potsy, Ralph Mouth, and Mrs. C, but I've been turned down by Henry Winkler a few times. I just think he's the coolest. I've met him a couple of times.
yeah.
He spoke at something I was at, and I actually got to meet him. It's the first time like I ever shook in front of somebody, and because I think like all of a sudden my brain went, dude, you're like standing with the Fonz. and like
Yeah, dude. Are you
and
kidding?
like and there's few people that rise to the level of Henry Winkler in terms of icons and iconic stature. Um, but he's sort of on my bucket list of the answers. I mean, obviously, like I'd love to speak to, like a Quentin Tarantino or a Steven Spielberg. Those would be cool people to talk to. I really love though talking to the people from 60s, 70s, 80s, maybe people that haven't worked in a bit and they just have a bunch of stories to tell. Those are, a lot of times it's people that I watched growing up, either in reruns or real time. And, it's just fun to be able to kind of sit with those people for an hour and kind of just collect stories.
I know we've maxed out our sports collateral here, but Henry's a huge Mahomes fan, and he met him, and he got weird around Mahomes. So that could be an ends for you. And I actually went to World of Wheels last winter and didn't realize he was going to be there. And I come over and I see the Fonz, and I'm like, hold on a second. I missed him by like 10 minutes. He was over signing autographs and doing his thing. Um, but in the world of jazz, his girlfriend on the show, Linda Pearl, is a jazz singer, and I've interviewed her a few times, and she's wonderful. So I got within Kevin Bacon distance. So
I met him once many, many years ago. And then a few years ago, he was at a Comic-Con, in the Motor City Comic-Con. And so I went because I wanted to get an 8x10 with him or from him. And it's on my wall. It says, Jeff is cool. So I got the Fonz saying I'm cool.
that's right.
But talk about a guy that knew how to work the room.
Yeah.
So, I mean, his line was so long. It was like the line, and then they had to continue the line on the other side of the hall. And every now and then he'd walk over to like the bullpen where we were, like the line waiting to become the line. And he would shake hands and say hi and then go back. And I'm like, gosh, this guy's like a master class.
Yeah.
Like no one's leaving this line. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's just like, it was just so cool. It was really
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
So I'm curious, how did you get to this point? Tell me where you were born and raised. What were the seeds of tech and comedy and all of these kind of independent pursuits that you have now? How did that happen?
Uh, well, I was born in Detroit, Michigan, the son of a dentist.
There you go.
um, the funniest thing about is like about that is like I remember I did comedy for 20 years. Well, I still kind of do, but with the pandemic, it kind of shifted more to podcasting. But my whole life was like, oh, Jeff Dwoskin. Oh, your dad's my dentist. Oh, like literally my entire life, right?
Yeah.
And so and I'm just like, that's nice. So I'm in a club once, and someone goes, oh, Jeff Dwoskin. And it pauses, and I go, that sounds so familiar. He says, I'm like, oh, my dad's a dentist. And the guy goes, no, 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 I think I saw you do comedy. And then I realized what an idiot I was like saying. The only time in the world I've ever like responded that way.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think early on, my dad built a computer, a Heathkit, a Zenith, so big floppy disks. And so I would make like little databases. And I can't remember what when V was on the TV show V, I had like a bulletin board on I don't know what it was. I can't remember. And so I was always into computers, and I learned how to kind of program real basic stuff. And it just kind of always kind of stuck with me. I had a TI 99. I would, type in the codes and make little games. And so it was always kind of there in terms of my brain was more of a marketing brain,
Yeah.
but I always knew I'd say I have strong technical acumen. I know how to merge the two really well. marketing, business needs, consumer needs with technology, but I need someone else to do the technology. But that's where kind of like most of my career was. I was at a promotions agency and a Little Caesars and an analytics company. And so like my ideas, I could get people to translate those into technology that then the customers or end users would then use. And so that's just, when I realized, oh, I built web pages at a web development company in the late 90s, one of the first. And, you know, when people started saying, oh, well, you need to have built an app because now the iPhone's a big deal at this point, and you didn't ever built an app. I'm like, I built $1 million web pages, for Daimler Chrysler, their launch. I mean, we have Blue Cross Blue Shield. I mean, it's like I've done well, but have you done an app? You know how these
Yeah.
interviewers get, they're stuck in one thing. I'm like, all right, well, so I was really big on Twitter from being a comedian. And so we would play these hashtag games on Twitter. Hashtag game would be like hashtag marriage in 3 words. And, we'd built up an entire community around that. And I mean, we would trend like organically, like from 2015 to like January. If you saw a hashtag randomly trending and just jumped in on it, likely hashtag Roundup originated it. It was over 8,000 top 10 US trends we created. And so, but for that, I built an app so that I could I'm like, oh, but what if I'm not on Twitter? And so you would sign up, you would have the schedule. We had new games going every 90 minutes, and you'd get a push, a notification. This game is starting. Go to Twitter and play. And so, that was something. So I built an app, and then that got me my job at Little Caesars because they were trying to take their app from just basically a store locator into the world of e-commerce. I have app experience. I have marketing experience. And so then adapted it there. My social media background and Twitter background sort of then led me to the marketing team at Little Caesars as well. So I spent a few years developing their app and web page and e-commerce, and then moved to the marketing side. Then the pandemic hit, and then I kind of just went full gas down on gas on the pedal, gas
Yeah.
pedal, yeah, something,
Yeah.
whatever the analogy is, and went real fast to Stampede Social, and podcast sort of just became the main thing. So kind of whittled that down.
So what is the motivator for you every day? Every day you wake up, what gets you out of bed? What gets you to want to do what you want to do with your life?
I love creating things, and I love people enjoying things I created. I mean, that's really kind of what it comes down to. I mean, if I was just to whittle it down to anything, that would be it. I love coming up with ideas. I love executing them. And then I love when people use it and tell me, oh, this was great. Or this was, thanks for featuring me on your podcast. Or, hey, we just drove, X sales from using Stampede Socials, automated DM stuff on Instagram, so whatever it is, I get it. It was like, I'm always one of those things too, where it's like, I love coming up with ideas. I love getting them to work. I hate when it's finished, but I love when it's finished because that means then I have to go on to a new thing. But there, you kind of fall in love with the moment and then you move
Yep.
on. And then it's kind of always I'm sorry, and then it's always kind of revisiting the thing. One of the things I learned early on, it was someone said to me, Jeff, don't fall in love with love. And that, to me, what that meant was don't get caught up in the current emotion. You always have to kind of move past it and be able to re-examine what it is you're doing or did, and to be able to move it forward. And so it's always like, all right, we have this, what else can we do with what we've done? What can we build on? What easy thing can we do that would be huge? And what hard thing can we start that will be great once we implement it?
So of all of the things that you've done so far in your life, what are you the proudest of?
My kids and family. No, um,
I always have to, depending on who I'm interviewing, I always have to say, other than your family and your kids.
I know that's why I answered it though. So, I mean, I think I'm most proud of it's hard to say because like I mean, I'm most proud of I think the current thing, Stampede Social, because it's sort of my current kind of iteration because it was built on a lot of things over the years. Like it's the definition of pivot, 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 pivot. Okay, here's the good thing, you know. And so I really love that. But you know, I also love, I'm really proud of my podcast as well. I'm just a pure creative uh outlet. It's just something I just, you know, love doing. And when people kind of, you know, tell me about, you know, oh, I love this episode or I love this episode, I'm like, thank you. You know, that makes me feel good too. So,
So, if you could go back in the annals of stand-up comedy and be in the crowd for any show, where are you going?
where am I going? Um, oh, that's a great question. I'd love to have seen Rodney Dangerfield live
Yeah,
or like early Steve Martin. I think that would have been pretty cool.
yeah, yeah. That would be. Yeah, Dangerfield was he was in a different class.
Yeah, it would just been nice to see him live. You know, I talk about this, but like on other shows, but like so I don't want to, you know, blah blah. But there's something about live comedy that's just different than if you're watching it taped. And
Yeah,
like to really you can do this with art music too, or anybody, right? You do the jazz stuff, and it's like um when you're there and you can feel the electricity of it happening while it's happening, that's it's an amazing thing, especially
yeah.
if something very unique happens while you're there.
It's yeah, when I think about it too, and like I remember going to see Tom York in St. Louis back in the day, and everybody was like, it all depends on what kind of mode he's in. Could be a really good show, or he could come out dour. I remember seeing Dave Cross in Kansas City some years back, and he was
Oh,
in a mood. I mean, it was good, but I could just tell there was something that was like maybe he just kind of broke up with somebody, something was up, there was an edge that was a little bit different, but it was good, you know. And that's the beauty of it. It's like that person brings that energy in the room.
yeah, yeah. There's an electricity that you don't get when watching the Netflix specials or anything. It's not that you
Yeah,
can't enjoy them. It's just a
right.
different level. It's like
Yeah,
watching a concert on TV versus
yeah,
being there. You know?
yeah, yeah. So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into the 20-year-old version of yourself, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've gained up to this point. What would you tell your young version?
I would just say don't doubt yourself. You can really kind of accomplish anything you want, and that you know the world is built to not by default support people that want to do things outside of the box, and that it's okay to do that. And I think, you know, just keep going, do what you want to do and what makes you happy. Everything else falls in line.
So, Jeff, everyone has a perception of you. You have all these pockets of people, family, friends, clients, colleagues, those that see your comedy, those that get involved with your tech, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Who do I think I think I'm like this delightful funny guy. You know.
That's
I
it. Good night,
mean,
everybody. Tip jar on the way out.
you know, i I find myself doing things for other people. I mean, it's for me, but it's for other people. You know, I mean, I do comedy, hope that I entertain people. I do a podcast, hope that people listen and get entertained. So, you know, deep down, I just think I want, you know, there's probably some insecurities there. And so I try to rise above those and create things that say, look, I add value. I can do things. I'm fun. I can do cool things, you know, but, you know, I don't know. It's hard to self-reflect like that. So
So let's do this. If you could see any event in human history with your own eyes, anything that happened on this planet, where would you want to be? What would you want to see with your own eyes?
what would I want to see with my own eyes?
Yeah.
Oh, you know, it's rough. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see the Titanic, but that would be with I'd have to be on the boat, so that would be disastrous.
Yeah.
And then I'd have to quantum leap out of there in time.
Right.
Um, and it'd be interesting to like, and this is like morbid as hell, but like it would be interesting to have been at Ford Theater when Abraham Lincoln was shot, like just to
Yeah.
kind of see what actually happened there. Like, yeah, that would have been. interesting. But
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll have 20 different better answers later. That's a really good question. I never really thought about it. So
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of it. It's that whole cerebral thing. Like, where are you at right now? Because it could be different tomorrow, could have been different yesterday, you know.
right, right,
So,
right.
but I think the comedy answer is probably going to be pretty standard, but this one's a little bit different. So hey man, if anyone wants to get involved with Stampede Social, see your comedy, get involved with your podcast, anything in regards to your world, where do they go?
uh jeffisfunny.com is my podcast. It's also that'll get you to my podcast. Stampede.social. If you're a creator and you have content that you'd like to get to people, and there's some really cool tools, and you're really into Instagram, definitely check that out. From jeffisfunny.com, you can get to my YouTube channel if you want to see my comedy or episodes, or hop on over to whatever podcast app, probably whatever you're listening to this one. I'm probably right next door, so you can check that out as well.
Well, hey, I may have to tag Henry and Patrick on this and see what we let's generate it. Let's get it going.
At some point, somebody
Yeah.
he'll be like, all right, all right.
I'm giving in. I'm doing it. I'm in. Well, hey, man, Jeff, this has been great. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your story. Keep on keeping on, man.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on your podcast.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you. Cheers.